little bit of technical difficulties. Nothing's new with us. 2023, new year, same dude. You know what I'm saying? But with that, I'm just going to continue where I was at with the Cincinnati Bengals. I was basically just saying there's an argument to be made that the Bengals should be the favorite to defend their title as AFC champions this year. Obviously, um, the Bills have a part in that. The Chiefs have a part in that, of course. But the Bengals, you could argue, are um, playing a very well-rounded brand of football that the other two teams aren't quite playing right now. So I think going into the playoffs this year, going into it with higher expectations, obviously, well warranted. I think people are going to be surprised again. Um, but for me personally, I think I'm going to choose the Bengals to make the Super Bowl this year. Whether they win it, I don't know. But as of right now, they're my favorite. So I want to hear your perspective on it.
We're obviously going to talk about our actual predictions, and we'll break down all the games as we go through the playoffs, like we usually do. In fact, I think next week's podcast, the wild card weekend podcast, is one of my favorite podcasts that we do every year, if not my favorite. There's a couple others in there that we do every year that I really like, but um, yeah, I think it's going to be just fantastic. Some of the matchups that we get, because some of these teams that we're going to get on wild card weekend, we're not even going to like know what to expect, really, in my opinion. But we'll get to that in a minute with the next team I have on my list. Uh, with the Bengals, yes, they're playing a really appealing style of football. It seems to me when I watch them, they're always running the ball really well, whether that's with Joe Mixon or P. Ryan or a mix of the two. They play physically on the interior of that defensive line with DJ Reader back. They're able to do a pretty good job stopping the run. They're good rushing the passer situationally. Like when they have to get home, they have the capability to. And then they're just. It seems to me that their offense with Joe Burrow just eventually found their stride. Of course, it took a while. It took like the first month or so of the season, but they found it. And whether it's with or without Jamar Chase, with or without T. Higgins, with or without Tyler Boyd, whoever they have on that field, Joe Burrow is like the X factor. He's the difference maker. I don't know what it is about him. We saw it obviously in last year's Super Bowl run, and we've continued to see it down the stretch here. They've gotten hot at the right time. I think they're going to win on Sunday against Baltimore. Whether or not Lamar Jackson plays, they're going to lock up the division. They're going to have probably one or two home playoff games. I'm not actually sure if they can get the one seed at this point, but yeah, they're going to have a couple home playoff games most likely, and they're going to be right in the mix. There's really nothing else that you can really say. What really stands out to me, though, is their running game, and I think their passing game sort of feeds off that. And then DJ Reader, the difference that he makes for that defense is just something that you really wouldn't expect from a guy like that, but it's just the way it is. So, yeah, I really like the Bengals going into the playoffs. I'm not going to say I'm going to pick them to get to the Super Bowl yet. I still want to see some of the matchups
Right.
and where games are played, but they're certainly up there in like the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely am holding out in terms of when the matchups do make come into fruition. I will be able to change that pick here and there, but that's just where I stand right now. And with that, we can just. Oh, one other thing I wanted to add. I almost forgot. To me, the turning point was when Zach Taylor finally decided to become a predominantly shotgun offense. From that point on, It seemed like Joe Burrow could see the field much better. He was much more comfortable in that because he developed playing that style of football as well. And it also helped the offensive line. The offensive line from that point on seemed to take a lot of steps forward. Um, and those acquisitions they made finally started to come into effect from that point on.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, um, I want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Um, I can imagine this was a team on your list as well. Am I correct on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, man, what the hell happened on Sunday? They got run over by the Green Bay Packers, who was another team that we're not talking about today because we've narrowed this segment down to teams that have clinched playoff spots. But the Vikings have been the Vikings have been a
Kirk Cousins.
please no.
Sorry.
They've been just they're just the Vikings. Like there's nothing else you can really say. It got to a point at one time that I just started to believe that might be just a team that of destiny. Like they won so many close games that it's almost hard to fathom at this point. And they certainly have like the offense firepower to compete in the NFC. I think when you look at the weapons they have and compare it to the weapons that you see around the NFC, I think they're certainly up there. And Justin Jefferson is, um, I think, my pick to probably win Offensive Player of the Year or something along those lines. But yeah, it's just like, man, when they've lost big time. And I have questions about their defense at times. So it's just sort of like what can we expect? Is this a team that is going to figure it out next week and go into the playoffs with still some momentum on a great season and with a young coach that we really like and an offense that we really like, or is this going to be a team that fizzles out earlier than they probably should for a season like they had? That's just my main question for the Vikings. I think it's all going to depend on who they play.
Yeah, it comes down to matchups, of course, always. But um, this team, like, you've probably heard this stat before. I'm not the stat guy. I just be listening to stuff and picking up stats off that. The stat has been going around a lot. The Vikings have a minus 19 point differential.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that just says it all. They're I believe they're 12-0 in close games, in one possession games. Um, it's just absurd. It really just doesn't make much sense. It seems to me in close games when the defense needs a stop, they get the stop. But when the offense gets off to a bad start, the floodgates just kind of open and they just don't close up again. There were a few games here and there, like the Bills game, where they were able to right the ship and come back and pull it out in the end. But ultimately, that defense, man, it's rough. Like um, it's hard to explain like how much they just broke down mentally that game. That game just that game. Well, when I say that game, I mean the Packers game um, from this past weekend, obviously. But they just they were just broken. It was crazy to watch a team that had won that many games just face Aaron Rodgers in an important game where they could send them home, just completely fall apart. It was unbelievable, honestly. Um,
Mhm.
and ultimately, they kind of fall into the same trap the Packers have the last few years offensively. The Packers obviously had that great connection between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. But if you become too reliant on one receiver, um, it's just not a good formula at the end of the day. It'll win you a lot of games in the regular season, but when it comes to December football, all it takes is obviously injury or just one bad game from that wide receiver, and for whatever reason, obviously, Justin Jefferson was just off and couldn't get his footing, and Jair Alexander just got in his head completely. No other way of putting it. So just
Yeah, and
yeah,
I don't know what the seeding scenarios are. I haven't looked that far ahead yet. Just with everything that happened on Monday, I haven't really been thinking about um, this week yet in football. But um, if there was a scenario where the Vikings got the 2 seed or the 3 seed, and what if they had to play a team like the New York Giants that can be physical and that can run the football and do all those things give that I think will give a team like the Vikings potential trouble. If you can control time of possession and keep that offense at bay, it could be keep it to a lower scoring game. I think there are certain formulas that you can use to beat this Vikings team. So I'm just going to be super interested to see the what their first round wild card matchup is.
yeah,
Uh,
and I do believe it would be the Giants, but as you said, it's gonna be super intriguing. Obviously, that's why they're on the list. But man, oh my goodness, um, if they fall apart like that again in a playoff game at home, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what would happen. Like, will Vikings fans riot? Like, what like I don't know. I really don't know.
yeah. All right. Well, who's your next team?
Um, my next team is the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, it's been a you know interesting last few weeks for the Chiefs. Um, they've been in some close games, but they've ultimately gotten the job done in the end. Um, their defense was opportunistic, I'd say. Not horrible, not great either, but I think good enough to where you can feel good going into the playoffs. I think some of the young guys are coming into their own a little bit. Trent McDuffie has made some nice plays in the secondary. Um, things are kind of rounding into form nicely, but I think obviously where this Chiefs team strength is at is offensively, and this year I stand behind the fact that I think their offense is better than what it has been in prior years because of the amount of weapons they have. They've implemented Sky Moore into the mix these last few weeks. Kadarius Toney, some of that speed um, from Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Um, they've implemented Juju Smith-Schuster in spurts. They have a entire collection of wide receivers that they can go to at this point, and that was just not the case in prior years. Um, and you know, in a year like last year where your second receiver is McCole Hardman and your third receiver is Byron Pringle. It's a completely different scenario from what you have now, where you have you know different lineups you can put in that wide receiver. It's pretty incredible, honestly. And then you obviously have that offensive line and that running game that they've been able to have. It makes this offense that much more scary. Um, and I did go out on a limb and make the Bengals my favorite as of right now to go to the Super Bowl. But um, I think with that being said, Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in football, and there's no way you can rule him out in any shape or form, especially with the way last year ended. I think if Patrick Mahomes can play the way he did last year with those weapons, with these weapons, then the Chiefs are going to be extremely tough out, especially if they have home court or home field advantage. Sorry.
Yeah, they check all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. I don't think the defense is much to worry about. I think they'll do enough offensively where you don't come to a point where you have to worry about that. But it is, in the AFC, it's going to be challenging with Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, some of these other quarterbacks, even like Lamar Jackson, possibly the Dolphins offense if they get in with a healthy Tua. Like there are offenses that can go toe to toe and have that firepower to test your defense. So it'll be interesting to see, but at the end of the day, experience, 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 head coach check, quarterback check, weapons check. Um, been there, done that check. Like they just check all the boxes, and until I think they will end up with the number one seed. I think that's fairly safe to say. I think they have to play Denver this week and win. I think. Well, of course, it depends on uh, what happens with the Bills, but I think if they win, they'll be in a really good position to lock that one seed up, and uh, they're certainly capable of winning 2 home games to get to the Super Bowl. So, not much to talk about there with the Chiefs, but they are a very interesting team going into the playoffs. I want to talk about the New York Giants, a team that I'm going to be honest. I don't think you nor I nor nor
No, nothing new. Nothing.
um, we didn't expect them to be here, but they are. And I think that's, first of all, a credit to Brian Dable. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the Giants is they're a well-coached team. And that matters in the playoffs. I think football more than any other sport that we talk about on this podcast, like basketball or baseball, um, coaching matters the most in football. I think by far. And look, that's except maybe at the college level, where I think in college basketball, coaching matters a little more than the NBA. But that's another story for another day. I think um, with what Brian Dable is able to do with this team on a week out, week in, week out basis, it's been impressive. And I put them, we haven't done awards talk yet, but I'd put him right up there in my coach of the year candidates. Certainly for what he's been able to do as a first year coach. The Giants got their guy at coach, and that had sort of been, aside from the quarterback situation, another concern with the Giants the past couple of years, ever since Tom Coughlin left the organization. So you know, it's it's especially hard to win when you don't have a quarterback. But when you don't have a coach or a quarterback, you're pretty much screwed. So luckily they found their guy. He's an offensive guy. He checks all the boxes um, at the head coach position, and he's helped Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has cut down on his turnovers. He's making smart decisions. He's being like that game manager type, very capable guy. He's using his legs when he has to. And I think if you're the Giants right now, you're thinking about giving him like a 2-3 year extension in the offseason. Whereas coming into the year, we weren't really sure whether or not that was going to be the case. Um, but Brian Dable has given him a chance to figure it out. Um, and I think it's worked out. He's throwing the ball away more. He's being smart. He's taking care of the football. They have a running game. Obviously, I want to see some more from these weapons on the outside, but I think with this defense that's really good situationally and well coached, they could scare someone in the first round for sure. I think it'll depend on who they play, but if it were me, I don't know if I want to see the Giants right now going into wild card weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for the Giants is um, they were they've been left for dead many times this season. It feels like, even though they kept on winning, people kept on doubting them, and they just kept on winning. And then obviously they had that little down stretch. Obviously that came to its head with the loss to the Lions at home, where they gave up a ton of points. From that point on, it feels like this team really turned another corner, and they've been able to um, really lean into the drop back passing game in a way that we've never seen before from Daniel Jones, at least not at this high of a level. And that's where um, I questioned their ability to be successful in the playoffs early in the year. But now that they've shown that they can, um, be successful on, say, a 3rd and 8 in a big moment, um, they've gotten it done. And to me, that's what's most impressive. And props to Daniel Jones. And this team, I mean, they can do some things, man. I don't know. Darius Slayton, he's been really good, and Isaiah Hodgins is a guy they found as a second guy who's been really solid as well these past few weeks. So um, I don't know, man. I'm right there with you. I don't know if I'd want to play the Giants in a wild card game.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating come next week. See who they
Absolutely.
play. I think they're locked into the 6th seed though,
Hmm.
so they will be playing the 3 seed in the playoffs. Whether that's the Cowboys, the Vikings, we don't know who it'll be yet. But I think the Buccaneers are locked into the 4 seed, so it's going to be one of those teams. I'm pretty sure, or maybe I'm not sure who else it could be, but yeah, the Giants are certainly dangerous. So I think I have one more team that I want to talk about before we go. Do you have another team that you want to discuss?
Um, well, my last team was going to be the Los Angeles Chargers.
Mm-hmm. That was
Um,
mine too.
okay, perfect. Um, I'll just start then. Yeah, the Chargers, they've been tougher as a team these past few weeks, and that's the most encouraging sign. They've been able to make adjustments defensively. They've kind of gone away from Brandon Staley's mainstay defensively, which is that cover 4 look that kind of exposes them in the run game. And we saw that at the beginning of this year as well. Uh, they've gone away from that a little bit. They've mixed things up, which is always good. And I think rolling, Justin Herbert, a healthy Justin Herbert out there at quarterback each week, you have a chance to win. So, um, from a playoff standpoint, I think you can't really rule it out, but I think ultimately um, you just want to be able to win a playoff game. I think that's the expectation you would have had as a Chargers fan going into the year, as a realistic Chargers fan at least. Just win a playoff game. From there, you can move forward, gain momentum, make more moves. Do what you need to do. But I think that would be a really good landmark for this organization, especially for Justin Herbert's career. Um, the reason I think it's just one playoff game is the goal. I just don't know if they'll be able to stop the run at a high level against the elite teams,
Mhm.
because you won't be able to sell out against the run against a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or a Josh Allen. So in those situations, will you be able to stay in your pass defense but still be able to you know um, go up and stuff the line of scrimmage and hold your own at the line of scrimmage, and stuff the run. So that's the biggest question. But if they can do that, they have a chance against anyone.
Yeah, to me, the past month or so, it's been about a team that hadn't been healthy the entire year, that's just now rounding into healthy form and has figured some things out. I think Justin Herbert looks a lot better than he did earlier in the season after that injury. Obviously, getting Keenan Allen back and having a guy like Austin Eckler in the playoffs will be huge. Um, Also, Mike Williams as a downfield threat. I think their offense is going to be fine as long as it's healthy. That's what we've seen. And just earlier in the year, they weren't really. But the thing to me is when you're a defensive head coach, to me, you got to be able to, when you come from a defensive background or you're a defensive minded coach, and that's your sort of specialty per se, you can't have your defense looking like crap. And to me, I think Brandon Staley, whatever he's done the past couple of weeks, the adjustments have been good. And they're playing really well defensively. I believe they're number one in a lot of categories since week 14. They're like number one in points per game allowed. They're playing really, really good third down defense. They're good situationally. You got to be able to get off the field on third downs. Um, the past couple of weeks, they've held teams to relieve like 30% or lower on third down, so that's a good sign. They're playing better against the pass and the run, so you just hope that momentum continues into the playoffs. I think getting a lot of these guys back healthy at the right time this time around will help you. And then is there certainly couldn't have been, in my opinion, a situation where you don't make the playoffs with Justin Herbert 3 years in a row. And that's what it would have been if some things went differently and you're not in the playoffs this year. But you are in the playoffs. Now the goal is win one playoff game and go from there.
Exactly.
Uh, you're gonna have to probably play it on the. You are gonna have to play it on the road, but I think it'll be a good test for this organization. The last time, well, we won't even talk about the last time they were in the playoffs. Yeah, so I think that's their focus right now. They're right about where I think a lot of people thought they'd be, like 10, 11 wins. Uh, and that division is probably, I mean, I know the Chiefs have surpassed that, but it's probably like right around where you thought they'd be in this division. It'd be hard to go beyond that just because of how strong we thought the division was going to be coming into the season. They met that expectation. It wasn't pretty along the way, but they did it, and now they're here healthy and ready to go for the playoffs. And I think they're dangerous. Um,
They they toughened up as a football team and they stopped charging. So
yeah.
keep not charging, please.
No, Chargers, no.
And no charges, no.
Yeah, that's a better impression. But yeah,
Anyways, okay. I think that'll do it. I didn't get to talk about the Cowboys. I thought I had them on my list, and then I realized I didn't. But it's okay. I'll talk about them at some other point. Um, so that's gonna do it for episode 141. Um, appreciate y'all listening. I hope the audio quality was good on this one. My mic, I made an adjustment. I switched out the cord that I've been using, so hopefully that helps. Um, and as always, take care. Have a great 2023, I guess. Uh, prayers for Damar Hamlin, obviously. And yeah, I'll
yeah.
let you sign
Be
off.
sure to catch the first half of this podcast. That we had some technical difficulties, so if you're just watching this video, it might not make much sense. You got to go back and watch some of the first part as well. Like, subscribe to the channel. This is our first podcast of 2023. We haven't discussed it much just because of the New Year's and the holidays, but we will have some things that we want to improve on as a podcast going into this year. So hopefully by next time that we are on this feed, we can talk about some of those things that we're wanting to improve moving forward, including, I think, getting some more fan involvement would be a good idea.
Right.
But that's another story for another day. And then also, be on the lookout for maybe some bonus content on our Patreon channel as well. And then obviously a basketball podcast will be coming soon. And then obviously our wild card weekend football will be our next football show. So that'll be super fun.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot to go. There's a lot going on.
there's
Right.
a ton going on right now. Prayers to Damar Hamlin. And I guess just like the 6 teams that we discussed earlier in their playoff hopes, we are going, gone. Peace out, y'all.
Deleted. Delete. See ya. Peace out.